The Houston Rockets have had a very strange season this year. They made some very bold and creative choices, with this team being restructured to play micro ball. Going into the playoffs, I wouldn't have been surprised if this team lost to the Thunder in the first round, or if they went the distance. What did surprise me is how terribly they played in the second round against the Lakers. The Rockets just completely collapsed on themselves, leaving fans very disappointed. I actually have always respected how bold the Rockets have been in the D'Antoni era. The whole organization has a competitive fire. When most of the league was folding during the Warriors' KD era, the Rockets went the other route and decided they would be the team to beat them, and they almost did. Daryl Morey is not afraid to make huge moves, and this year wasn't any different. I do think that after the Rockets traded for Russell Westbrook, they kind of had to make the bold choice of playing micro ball in order to get the most out of Westbrook, who was at his best surrounded by shooting. This way, they could clear the lanes for him to violently attack the rim instead of taking three-point shots and long twos, considering the fact that Westbrook can't shoot worth a lick. And even though Westbrook plays super hard every single possession, for which he does deserve respect, let's face it, the guy doesn't have a very high basketball IQ. Maybe that sounds harsh to many, but it's the truth. The Rockets needed to put him in a position he could succeed in and actually help the team win, and in the playoffs they went away from that plan. Westbrook went back to shooting a ton of threes and taking horrific shots. James Harden also gets his fair share of the blame. He again, in the playoffs, wasn't able to match his regular season production. Though to be fair, he did improve his efficiency, and for the most part played well when Westbrook was out against the Thunder. But Harden again proved that he isn't the player to turn to in clutch situations. He struggled in Game 7 against the Thunder and played poorly in fourth quarters. The Rockets have some big decisions to make this offseason. They seem completely lost, to be honest with you. I think Mike D'Antoni did the right thing leaving the team, considering he will be the frontrunner with at least a few teams in the offseason. Rockets ownership always took him for granted, and D'Antoni would always be a lame duck coach with this team. Do I think the Rockets' future is bleak with very few options going forward? The answer is no, but I do think their backs are against the wall. In this video, we will discuss the two directions this team can realistically go in the next 2 seasons. We will break down 2 trade scenarios for the Rockets if they choose to double down on this current team and continue going for it, and a realistic rebuild option in case the Rockets choose to tear it all down. I'm going to break down who they should hire as their next head coach, and if this team's championship window is still open, as well as which direction I believe the Rockets should go in. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to turn on the bell notification so I can keep getting that content out to you. Also check out the playlist in the description section on other teams' 2-year outlooks I find interesting, and leave a comment on your thoughts on this team. I do try and respond to most comments the first few days the video is up. So look, this Rockets team is in a very tricky situation going forward. When Daryl Morey chose to trade for Russell Westbrook, he mortgaged a chunk of the team's future to do so. He traded away the Rockets' 2024 and 2026 first-round draft picks, which Morey only protected 1 through 4, and a pick swap in 2021 and 2025, which is protected 1 through 20. The gun to this team's head will be the fact that when those 2024 and 2026 picks will go through to the Thunder, James Harden and Russell Westbrook will be in their mid to late 30s, well past their prime. And when players rely on their athleticism like Westbrook does, they particularly age poorly when they pass their prime. And even though James Harden doesn't rely on his athleticism, he will surely be in a massive decline by that point. Those 2 picks the Thunder will get from the Rockets could very well be valuable lottery picks, which will prolong any rebuild the Rockets will try to aspire to. Daryl Morey will have to decide this offseason whether or not to go for it and attempt to trade for a third player that can elevate this team, considering his 2 stars are still in their prime. Or he can pull the plug and salary dump Westbrook and trade James Harden for as many picks and young pieces as he can while he still has value. And to be honest with you, his value will never be higher than it is today. Let's start with the first option. Even though the Rockets don't have many assets left to play with, it doesn't mean they have 0 left in the cupboard. I envision 2 realistic trade scenarios Daryl Morey might be able to execute to give this Rockets team one last chance at that championship. The first trade Daryl Morey can try and execute before making a more quote-unquote desperate trade is with the Indiana Pacers revolving around Miles Turner. This, in my opinion, is the ideal trade to make if the Rockets choose to go for it, as Turner will give the Rockets more size and defense, all the while being able to continue to space the floor for this team. Turner is an effective stretch 5 who can run the floor and is a very good shot blocker, considering he has finished top 4 in the league in blocks per game the past 4 seasons, and will add some youth to this team as he is still only just 24 years old. Miles Turner has not been a great fit on the Pacers, playing alongside Domantas Sabonis. It is clear the Pacers prefer Sabonis over Turner and will likely seek an affordable and productive player who fits better with this team. The Rockets can offer the Pacers Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, and a 2021 first-round draft pick in exchange for Turner. Covington is in the middle of his prime and a valuable 3-and-D wing who will fit perfectly with the Pacers. And even though PJ Tucker is further along in his career, he is still a valuable contributor who can add depth to the Pacers. And that 2021 pick can give them more flexibility going forward as they continue to build that Pacers squad. I think this will be a compelling offer the Pacers will at least consider. The Rockets can sprinkle in some second-round picks if they have to in order to get it done. Miles Turner will be a perfect fit with this Rockets team. I honestly think this trade will rejuvenate the Rockets next season and again make them a dangerous team. The next trade the Rockets can realistically make will be deemed desperate by some and bold by others. Daryl Morey can trade Eric Gordon, Robert Covington, PJ Tucker, and a 2021 unprotected first-round pick to the Detroit Pistons in exchange for Blake Griffin. The Pistons are in full-blown rebuild mode, and this will unload Griffin and his next 2 years and $75 million off the books and give them assets for their rebuild. Even though Gordon himself presents a bad contract for the foreseeable future, the Pistons will receive the Rockets' first-round draft pick and Covington, who they will be able to flip for another draft pick, considering the fact that 3-and-D wings are always coveted. This will help the Pistons with their rebuild and bring in a player who just last year made the All-NBA team to the Rockets. Now this will be a risky trade for the Rockets as Blake Griffin is incredibly injury prone and the Rockets will be giving up a lot of depth to get him. Griffin was only limited to 18 games this season. The rewards, however, can be substantial if the trio of Westbrook, Harden, and Griffin can actually stay healthy for an entire season and postseason. Last year, Blake Griffin averaged 24.5 points on solid efficiency, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.4 assists. He also shot an impressive 36.2% from beyond the arc, which would fit nicely with this Rocket squad. Griffin would be a big help for this team in the pick and roll and with rebounding, in addition to the scoring punch he would give the Rockets. They can play the athletic 6'9" forward at center to continue their small ball offense. If they choose to go for it next season, this would be a huge gamble for the Rockets that they might have to make. Let's move on to the rebuild option. If Daryl Morey decides to blow the whole thing up, he would have to decide this offseason because Harden still has a ton of value and the Rockets will still have 3 seasons to rebuild and draft some nice prospects before that lightly protected 2024 pick goes to the Thunder. First, they will have to salary dump Russell Westbrook, and the only team that I can think of that would entertain taking him on in his remaining 3 years and $131 million would be the New York Knicks. The Rockets can send him over to the Knicks in exchange for Bobby Portis, Alfred Payton, Taj Gibson, and Reggie Bullock. Now again, for the Rockets, this would purely be a salary dump, whereas for the Knicks, they get their headliner. The next step would be to extract maximum value for James Harden, who is still considered a top 6 player in the league, and just earned an All-NBA first-team selection. He will be an extremely coveted player, and the fact that he is locked in on a long-term contract will only make him more valuable. In this scenario, Daryl Morey sends Harden to the Pelicans in exchange for Lonzo Ball, JJ Redick, who Morey can then flip for more assets, Nicolo Melli, last year's 8th overall pick Jackson Hayes, who's a nice young prospect, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who has shown promise, and a treasure trove of draft picks that include the Pelicans' 2021 draft pick, their 2023 and 2025 draft picks, which they will have an option to pick swap with the Lakers, and the 2024 unprotected Lakers pick. These are mostly draft picks that the Pelicans received in the AD trade that they will be sending over to the Rockets. This would be a very sizable haul for the 31-year-old James Harden. Those 2 Lakers pick swaps and the Lakers unprotected 2024 pick will in particular be valuable considering LeBron could very well be retired by then and AD will be at the end of his prime. There's a solid chance that those will end up being lottery picks. I believe this trade would set the franchise up for a successful future going forward. From the Pelicans' perspective, this makes them an instant championship contender with a core of James Harden, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and Drew Holiday. You could even argue that that would transform the Pelicans into championship favorites. If Daryl Morey decides to go for it again and trade for Miles Turner or Blake Griffin, they should hire Alvin Gentry, who is another very good offensive coach. I think the players will get along with Gentry, and the Rockets will need a creative offensive-minded head coach. If the Rockets decide to blow the team up and rebuild, they'll have plenty of options to choose from. Kenny Atkinson has a great reputation as someone who's good at developing young talent. He'll be a great option for the Rockets. I think this is a very tough decision for Daryl Morey. I know though that he will be itching to bring this team back, and will likely make another bold move, like for example trading for Blake Griffin. He probably thinks the Rockets' championship window is still open, and has been on record saying that draft picks are an overvalued commodity in the NBA. Me personally, I think the championship window is pretty much closed, and the longer Daryl Morey stubbornly plays around with his science experiment, the worse position the Rockets will be in long term. James Harden's value will only drop the older he gets, and the team will be closer to 2024 when they have to start paying up those draft picks to the Thunder. If I were the Rockets, I would salary dump Westbrook if possible, and trade James Harden away for a treasure trove of assets, like the one the Pelicans, for example, can offer. In fact, I would make that trade and not even lose a single night's sleep because I'd know I would be setting up this franchise for long-term success. The Houston Rockets admirably consistently went for it, and had a very respectable competitive spirit. They tried, they came close, but unfortunately it didn't work out. All things must come to an end, and I do think that deep down, Daryl Morey knows it's over. What do you guys think? Should the Rockets bring the squad back next year and make a bold trade? Or should they blow it all up? Let me know in the comments section. I really do try and respond to most people's comments. And again, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, hit the like button, and remember to turn on the bell notification so I could keep getting that content out to you. Also, check out the playlist in the description section on other teams' 2-year outlooks I find interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Till the next one, guys, I'm out.